Welcome back to the weekend debate, and I thought, just as generalising, to be more up to date, the present parts of where we're up to and how things are going. You're having a shindig. You brought a guest over here. You're celebrating. I mean, that's
we're
in
celebrating
itself.
the 30th birthday of the outfit and of also the demonstration with outrage, because with the costume on its own, it wouldn't be popular, but so we invited outrage in to help us from the gay group. So it's made the costume and the demonstration with outrage iconic on the Isle of Man, and all that information is now part of the Manx Museum archive.
So just put this in context. 30 years ago exactly since you were over, he's a guest. He's a guest of honour. The outfit is there. Isn't this a kind of craziness, the whole thing, to think that's happened? No?
It's in one respect it is crazy, but it's a really good
crazy,
in the fact that we've come from these really dark times to, Alan could be a guest of honour at Tynwald. Peter comes over as a welcome guest on the island. The Manx community, by and large, now fully accept the gay. See, we've had a first public pride. There have been other small prides with John Wright, but this is the first one in public. So, yes, it's strange that this is happening, but it's all in a very, very good way. It shows the progress the Isle of Man has made over those last 30 years. It's something we can be proud of, I think, over here.
What was it like for you to be involved in that pride, by the way? You holding the flag and everything?
It was a nice feeling, I must admit.
Yeah.
I never thought, I battled hard over the years on all sorts of gay issues, but I never thought the day would come where I'd be walking down the main street in Douglas, leading or helping to lead a gay pride event. And it was a very successful day. And actually the nice thing about it was not the participants, but because we were walking down Strand Street, an awful lot of shoppers were there, people coming out of the shops, clapping and cheering and everything. Something, again, I never thought we'd see on the Isle of Man, even though I'm an optimist.
Hazel was beaming carrying the flag. I saw the French woman Hazel looking under the flag and big smile on her face. So, it was good for all the main people that fought for our rights. Alan, Hazel, had under that flag.
You're nodding, Peter. I mean, this is just generalised everywhere, isn't it? I mean, everywhere is now accepting. There's no little islands anywhere else that need your attention?
Pretty much. I mean, it is an amazing story of redemption. I've always argued that, when bigotry exists, it has to be challenged. Mm. But at the same time, we should always hold out the olive branch to help and hope that those people will come over to our side, and that's what's happened. It's really an amazing story of positive change, and I think it's helped make the Isle of Man a more liberal, kinder, gentler place across the board, and that's good for everybody on the island.
And the other thing about that stuck in my mind about the Pride March is that just how many much younger people were in it. It wasn't old hands like myself and Hazel and others being involved in it.
I was invited to Youth Pride before this one as well.
They had another one, did
they? They had a youth before this one, I think,
okay.
But I just hope that the young people who, and this is the worry I do have, so many young people get engaged in it, that they don't forget the battle we had to get here in the first place. Because if you look around the world at the moment, it's not a happy place for gay rights and civil rights in so many different countries. And young people need to be aware that while enjoying the rights they have today is great, they must also be prepared to defend it, because those rights can be taken away just as easily.
Pride is not all about a party. Pride
it absolutely isn't a party. No.
It's not about just going and enjoying yourself and getting drunk and getting married. You've got to think where pride's come from, where we've come from, to where we are now, and there's other countries out there.
Well, let's talk about being smacked in the face in Russia and things like that. I mean, still out there, isn't it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've done some pretty risky things, and I think that the two attempted citizens' arrest of President Mugabe in Zimbabwe.
Oh, yes.
One in London in 1999, when myself and members of Outrage ambushed his motorcade in the street and actually had him under arrest. But the police arrested us instead and allowed him to go Christmas shopping at Harrods with a police escort. And the second time was in Brussels in the lobby of the Hilton Hotel, when I was beaten unconscious by his bodyguards. But although I never wanted that, and although it's given me a bit of brain and eye damage, it was actually great, because a lot of people seeing that footage, which is televised.
That
around the
was
world.
a punch, though. That
Yeah,
really
yeah.
knocked you for six,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
But a lot of people who saw that footage thought, well, if President Mugabe is prepared to have his bodyguards
Yeah.
beat up a peaceful protester in the heart of a European capital city, Brussels, in broad daylight, in front of the world's media, just imagine what he's doing to his own people when no one is watching.
Right.
So it's a very effective way to expose the brutality of his regime.
Yeah, I mean, you see this happen on camera, and I'm saying that your thing happened on camera. Do you think the media really did play a massive part in changing most people's perceptions to some degree? To get things changed? Or if we didn't have all this sort of exposure of things, it would just be swept under the carpet?
I mean, the media always has an important role to play in this. I mean, look in Eastern Europe at the moment, where the media is actually subdued by the governments.
Yeah.
They're not getting the support that they need. So, but if you get a free press, free media, then all these things are brought out in the open, and you know, daylight, sunlight is the best cure for reforming a lot of these ailments in life.
And is it Hungary that's having issues at the minute? I mean,
Hungary-
what's your opinion on that?
Hungary and Poland.
Hungary
Yeah.
and Poland, yeah.
What did you say?
Both blatantly define the principles of the European Union. The European Union has a charter of fundamental rights and freedoms, and both those countries are violating them. Not just on LGBT plus rights, but also on migrants and refugees and ethnic minorities as well. I think the European Union stance has been very, very weak. If you want to belong to a club, you've got to abide by the rules.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's time the European Union started cutting off the funds to Hungary and Poland until they comply with the basic human rights principles of the European Union.
It's ironic, isn't it, that Hungary at the moment is negotiating for something like 7 or 8 billion handout from Brussels.
Yeah.
At the same time, they're clamping down on the rights of the individuals and completely contradicting the values of the EU. I could see the day coming when Hungary should be kicked out of the EU, quite honestly.
What do you think would happen to the Isle of Man if things hadn't changed? Do you think it would have gone all the way?
I think had the Isle of Man not changed, we hadn't brought in the law, the UK would have legislated over our heads.
Yeah.
And that could have had a very serious effect on the economy. Who would invest in the Isle of Man under one set of financial laws if the UK could step in tomorrow and change
And
the
that would have been
law?
that would have been a Conservative government.
It would, and it was made clear what would happen to the
and
island.
you know what Labour would like to do with the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's basically, if Conservatives would have done it, if Labour would have won, they would have brought in more legislation because it's been done.
Yeah.
It would have opened the doorway then.
Yeah. So I don't think the Isle of Man would have been allowed to maintain the regime much longer than it did. But the downside would have been serious damage to the Isle of Man's economy, as well as the ongoing damage, of course, to our young people who were suffering from that.
Okay. Well, we talked about how the Isle of Man went from one extreme to almost another one. Legalising everything almost. I mean, and you've already mentioned that, touched that. Your thoughts when you were pushing this through? Was it an easy push or was it a hard push?
Well, it was surprisingly easy in the end. I mean, the real battle was the decriminalisation, because you really need to read Hansard just to appreciate just how vicious and vile that debate was at the time. But actually, once we'd got that through and got that accepted, it all went quiet. The dam had burst. All the vile comments and actions had been beaten back, and then we had a whole sequence of events after that. We got rid of Section 28. We got equal age of consent. All the various iterations of that.
It was all basically put through with a nod instead of debating it.
that first one,
marriage and legal. Gay marriage,
yes.
I almost went without a debate. It was astonishing.
I did my civil partnership, and then we converted. Once marriage was done, we converted to marriage. So.
But wasn't there a little pushback when from 21 down? It was legalised, which is the big one. Then that next one, I thought at the time was a little bit more, still a bit tricky.
There was some, but again, I didn't have any doubts at all after that. Talking to members privately, I knew what was going to happen. There was some comment outside, but not very much at all. The one I thought would have been a real problem was gay marriage. Civil partnerships went through quite easily, and then with gay marriage and equaling civil partnership for heterosexual as well as homosexual. That made a difference, actually, because then we were treating everyone the same.
Equal.
Because one of the arguments was that we're giving unfair treatment to the gay community. Well, we could show here that we weren't actually. We're ahead of the UK.
Yeah.
We're bringing in equal treatment for heterosexuals and homosexuals with civil partnerships, something straight people wanted for a long, long time. And that eased the path then to full gay marriage going through. And I haven't heard not a single reaction against gay marriage at all.
Whatever happened to that couple from the UK who came over here to do the
Oh yes,
equal partnership thing, and then went back and it wasn't approved or it wasn't recognised.
That's right. It was only recognised in the Isle of Man that. But it shows we were ahead of it.
They had to wait another 2 years to get it in the UK. Yeah, and that was only because the Supreme Court ruled against.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wow. We're so you see that it's like black and white.
So my fulsome tribute to the people of the Isle of Man.
Yeah. Any more?
So the other thing that we have now finalised in this house was the Equality Act, and that this is equality in the workplace and for everyone, not just for the gay community. But it cleared up a lot of loose ends where gay people potentially were discriminated against, but with an even-handed approach right across the whole community. And I must admit, I hadn't realised just how far behind the Isle of Man was on the equality legislation until you might remember there were two girls in Ramsey wanted to rent a flat together. They were in a same-sex relationship, and the owners of the flat refused them the tenancy because they were gay. And that outraged me completely. And I remember I was on BBC Politics show shortly after and talking about that. And Debbie Abrahams, who is the MP for Oldham, was on as well. And we had a long chat about this afterwards. And we were going through all the differences and to make me realise just how far the Isle of Man had fallen behind the UK. And that was the next big charge, alongside the gay marriage, was actually to bring in the Equality Act. We almost got it through before the House was dissolved 5 years ago. And then this current House finished it off 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was. But that was the other big battle that could have gone wrong. But it has given everyone now across the board equal rights, and that's what it should be in any community.
Yeah, I mean it's so strange when you think about the resistance, because that Equality Act was to establish the principle that every person on this island was guaranteed by law equal treatment and equal protection against discrimination. So why was there resistance? Why was there a fuss?
I mean, it's hard to fathom these, how people think about this, these sort of things. But thankfully, we've got in a comfortable place now, I think.
Wasn't the fact that happened, you jumped and screamed, and the media screamed, and everyone was screaming, and it got changed in the sense, well, it didn't get changed there and then, but you were going with the flow.
Going with the public flow, but also it's fair to say I think the makeup of the House of Keys changed over the years as well. You know, from, as I said, in the early days,
didn't get in.
The early days were all very conservative farmers, not interested in any side of this. But the last 2 or 3 parliaments in particular, I think there were people more aware of how important individual rights were, and were prepared to go along and support it. And so there hasn't really been much of an argument politically on bringing in these changes.
Is there any regrets or anything that's still not right, I mean, at the moment?
Well, we've got to bring, we've spoken to Claire Barber, is that we need to bring in hate crime now.
Hate crime?
Speech, because there have been a few attacks, 8 crimes where 2 gay lads were attacked. 2 years ago, there was Ryan E. was attacked. So basically, we need to get this hate crime legislation brought in now.
You touched on social media. Good luck, because I mean that's the trouble. It's a wild west out there, isn't it? Surely, hate crimes. I mean, okay, something happens physically, but so much of it is mental, isn't it?
Yeah,
online
and abuse. But we've got to go one step, haven't we? We've got to stop the violence from gay men being attacked, or anyone being attacked for that matter. So we need to bring this hate crime legislation in, which Claire Barber, if she's elected, will introduce it.
Well, I hope so, because the UK itself now is sinking into this cultural war, where the populist right-wing elements of the Tory government are stoking up a lot of this animosity, and that will often overflow into the Isle of Man UK attitudes. So I think it's something we should be very conscious of, even if we're not aware of that much hate on the island at the moment. The back noise of what's generated in Westminster
we need that,
and UK media.
We need that in place, have that hate crime legislation in place soon as. So basically, hopefully after the election, they'll introduce a bill and bring the hate crime in.
So just wrapping up the present, anything else that comes to mind as we'll look to the future, maybe in the last section, but we've come a long way and everything looks fine, but I'm just trying to see if there's anything that hasn't gone right, things we could have done differently.
I don't think there's much of a deficiency in our legislation now, in comparison to the UK anyway. I think we are very much up to date, and in some cases possibly even ahead of the UK. I think the real challenge for the future, as I said, I think is defending what we've got. Attitudes can change quite quickly, and with the media, the problem with the UK media in relation to Isle of Man is that issues can build up in the UK, which have no relevance in the Isle of Man at all, but because it's a headline story in the UK all the time, it does get absorbed into the mindset on the island, and that can change quite quickly how locals. I was talking to an election candidate last night who tells me she's been assaulted on the doorstep about the American election and how Joe Biden has stolen the election, and this person has absorbed everything from the media that Trump has been pumping out. I well remember when I was Minister of Home Affairs, the UK had a spate of ram raids, which we've never had a ram raid ever. These are cars, smashing into shop fronts and things like that. And there was a headline in the paper for about a month or so, what's he going to do about these ram raids? I then started getting calls from constituents, why hasn't the Isle of Man brought legislation to stop these ram raids? Most people in the Isle of Man didn't know what a ram raid was. But it's the influence, the background influence of the media. It doesn't matter what the issue might be, it gets absorbed almost subconsciously in people's minds over here. And that's, for the future, is a worry that if things do start to change, if the right-wing media in the UK starts to become aggressive in some ways, it could overflow on the island. And that's why I was so pleased to see so many younger people involved in Pride the other day, because they are the ones, they are the future, and they're the ones whose future we've got to protect and be sure don't get damaged by this change in media stance.
So I think that some of the girls are being very well outspoken even online, so these are the new generational campaigners are now coming forward, so it's time now, and it seems that the lesbians are taken by the eye, you know what I mean? So, so anyone shows any homophobia, it's the girls seem to be going for it. So
girl power.
Girl power.
Fantastic.
So
good positive point to stop on this one. We have one more section to go on the weekend debate.